Yes, okay. Got it. Okay, good. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the pathway that I've taken, slightly abnormal, unconventional. It's a pathway that I'll explain how I took it. And in taking and defending an unconventional pathway doesn't mean that I have anything against those who take a conventional pathway in medicine. I think one of the wonderful things about the medical degree is that there's so many options for you. And the key thing as students is to look at all the options and think about them. Now, how do I get the slide to change? That's better. Okay, what I'm going to talk about firstly is this list of things here, some observations on our planet, a little bit about careers in global health, a little bit about our world is actually a changing world, and then my own pathway. As Kajani mentioned, I'm building several hospitals and also setting up a big training program in Africa. Then some reflections. And then lastly, forgive me, I'm going to give you a bit of advice. In this talk, I should say at the beginning, there will be some pictures of patients, and everyone in it has given permission for their pictures to be shown. Observations on our planet first. You are younger than me, and you probably know a lot more about our planet, but just a few things to remind ourselves about this planet. This is a slightly old slide because I made it when we only had 7 billion people in the world, but we've now got 8. And I think it should actually be on every health planner's office wall, just a reminder of how money is distributed in our world. In the UK, we feel pretty poor if our salary is only, say, £30,000 or something. But if you earn 30 grand, you are in the top 1% of global earners. And the group that I'm particularly interested in are the people around here, the people for whom the line doesn't actually leave zero. They're so little. In our country, as you know, there's a lot of chat about the NHS isn't good enough, really. We need more money in the NHS. Does anyone know, this is the only question I'm going to ask, how much the NHS spends per person in the UK? No, well, I won't ask hands up. It's almost £3,000. So it's more than the median person in the world earns in a year. A few slides of statistics that I've got from the World Health Organization. First one is about just about diseases. And the World Health Organization has this methodology of measuring the burden of disease. We won't go into the details now because it doesn't really matter. But if you count up all the diseases in the world, perhaps someone could turn their microphone off. What? Could we turn microphone? Lovely. And so if you measure up all the diseases in the world, that's broken legs, heart attacks, HIV, COVID, etc. Africa's got about a quarter of the world's illnesses. USA and Europe have got almost another quarter, and the rest of the world. Could people possibly mute themselves?
Professor Lavy, I think you're host. You should be able to mute.
Can I mute people? Whoa, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's power.
Yeah, I'm not able to do that, I'm afraid.
Oh, okay, that's good. I've done the muting. Okay, so the rest of the world's got about half of the diseases. That's just how things lie. Who looks after these diseases? Okay, well, we in the Americans have almost 3/4 of the health workers in the world. And that's slightly embarrassing considering our country is trying to recruit health workers from parts of the country, parts of the world that don't have quite as many as we do. And how about money spent on healthcare? That's even more embarrassing. USA and Europe spend 85% of money in the world on healthcare. So is it surprising that actually conditions are not quite as good as they are here in many parts of the world? And Africa is the region that I've been particularly interested in. So can you see this graph? Can you see all the columns? Because I can't see the column on the right here, but maybe it's because your heads are covering it. But if you were to calculate out, as I did, surgeons per 100,000 population for several of the countries that I got involved in, their bar charts hardly score compared to that in the UK. And just as a, sometimes anecdotes can give us a better story than just looking at a graph. When I worked for 10 years in this little country of Malawi, when we had 12 million people, we started a surgical society, all 9 surgeons of us. We didn't need to meet in a hall. We could just meet in someone's house. I knew all the surgeons in the country, and I also knew their partners' names. In the big hospital in Oxford, where I work, I don't actually know how many surgeons there are. There's so many departments. I could possibly pass some ENT surgeons in the corridor without even knowing who they are, and we work in the same hospital. That's the difference in that's the difference in spread of resources. So a few thoughts about our planet. For those interested in careers in global health, I've just put this slide together. And why go into global health? Well, firstly, you can practice in places where there is enormous need. You can do teaching and training in places where there's almost need. If you're interested in a specific disease, such as, for example, some of my colleagues are very interested in HIV, there are places in the world outside of the UK where you can actually you can have a lot more impact and actually find out a lot more about it. There's so many areas of research in less well-resourced parts of the world, and there's a line that I put down there because that's one of the things that drives me: breaking down the inequity in healthcare, which I've explained a little bit about in the previous slides. So now a little bit of a reminder that our world is changing. And you will be practicing in a completely different world to the one I practiced in. What did I put up here? Put up these 2 formidable old ladies who were my great aunts. I never knew them, and they looked pretty frightening women. But they trained in nursing and went in 1868 to India to work and set up a school and a little hospital for blind kids. That was 1 year before the Suez Canal was opened. That's how long ago it was for them. It took about 6 months to get there, and one of them died as soon as they got there. Those of us who work in global healthcare now just nip down the road to Heathrow, get a plane, and maybe come back for your brother's birthday. Something. Our world has changed a lot, and our world's continuing to change. And here's a slide that I always smile about, but put love using. In Honduras, a beautiful bridge was made over this enormous river, and it was a lovely bridge. And they made it really strong because Honduras gets a lot of hurricanes. And in 1990, they had an enormous hurricane, and wonderful thing is the bridge didn't blow down, but there was so much debris that the river changed its course, and the bridge, it might just as well have blown down because it was absolutely useless. And I think it's a little reminder to us that actually things change. You can't practice the same medicine your granddad practiced. You probably can't practice the same medicine that I've practiced. And now I was asked to say a few words about my own pathway. And my own pathway has been one of setting up a College of Surgeons of East, Central and Southern Africa. And that is called COSEXA. If you want to find out more about it, you can Google COSEXA. and the kids' orthopaedic hospitals that I've had the enormous privilege of working with people to set up. Firstly, about the College of Surgeons, you've seen in my early slide that in the countries that, the swathe of countries in green here, the number of surgeons is probably in the region of 1% per head of population compared to the UK. Very small number of surgeons, very small number of training institutions, and a lot of surgeons in this region did go to the Western world to do training in the past, and then got so involved and that they didn't return. And one of the other wonderful things about surgeons is that we're very sociable people. We love to meet regularly, chat to our friends, have cups of tea and sometimes beer, and talk over surgical issues. And the surgeons from this swathe of green countries had been meeting for the last 50 years, the first week in December, talking over cases, and they would move around and have the meeting in different countries. And a group of us in 1997 got together and started talking about training, and felt, wouldn't it be a good idea if we could actually set up a college of surgeons for this region, a college of surgeons that would have offices in each of these countries, and a college of surgeons that could encourage surgical training. And there we are. In 1999, we set up our regional college of surgeons. I'm so proud to say it's now got more than 500 trainees. And what we've tried to do is not just train in university hospitals, good as they are. We've looked around the countries, and wherever we found a good hospital practicing good surgery, we've tried to put trainees there. You can ask me more about that later, but I'm going to rush on now. And here is one of the courses that we ran with COSEXA in the early days when we just got it going. So my own story was, I was a consultant in London at University College Hospital in the early 1990s, and I loved the work there. But I heard of the little country of Malawi, which at that time had 12 million people and didn't have an orthopedic surgeon. London, in that time, had almost 1,000 orthopedic surgeons. It was a country without orthopedic surgeons. So out of interest, and also because of the need, I and my wife went over there and sort of planned to stay there just a few years and see what it was like. Ended up being a whole decade, and a really big part of our life with regular returns. So just a smattering now of what's the clinical need in orthopedics in that part of Africa. Well, the first thing to remember is the majority of the population are children. The vast majority, more than half of the population are under 16. And these are the kids with a whole life ahead of them. What kind of conditions did we see? Well, we saw club feet, completely untreated club feet. And club foot, as some of you will know, is the commonest congenital musculoskeletal condition. And it occurs in about 1 in 1,000 births. And mostly in this country, it gets treated pretty quickly. And the kids are running around with straight legs by the time they start to walk. Here's a 15-year-old with untreated club feet. You can see he couldn't even wear flip-flops properly. He was able to walk around, but it was painful. Here's a boy with severe club feet. This is in Ethiopia, actually, whose feet were so painful he actually couldn't put his weight on them like the other guy, and he had to put his flip-flops on his shins to get around. Just imagine what it would be like to be that little boy, and correcting those club feet isn't rocket science. It's not the most. It's a tricky operation, but it's not the hardest in the world. And there he is with his club feet corrected, standing up there. I love that picture because it's there's kind of nothing special about him until you realize what he was like. You see him in the street, you think, there's a boy, dirty pink top, dirty jeans, but he's got his dignity back now. He can just walk around the street and act cool with the other boys. And just to show that we operate on girls as well, there's a little girl with severe Blount's disease, where the proximal end of her tibia doesn't grow properly on the medial side, and you end up with more and more deformity. And a simple operation dividing the tibia and straightening it up results in straight legs there. I love that picture because as a surgeon, I look at the fact that I fixed her legs and I'm really proud of them. So I look at the straightness of her legs. My wife said, however, she said, look at her now, you know, she's got a nice new frock on and she's had her ears pierced and she's now got a life. And just to show you that Blount's disease doesn't just affect girls, he was a little boy in Uganda with severe Blount's disease. Pretty simple surgery to straighten the legs, but it's a surgery that just wasn't being done. I'm not going to go into detail over that case, or this case, or like this case. This is a severe infection, osteomyelitis, affecting a little girl in Malawi, where the whole of her leg became a pool of pus and the tibial bone just died in the middle. So we removed it and then reconstructed her tibia with her fibula. Here's another case it is also a girl whose tibia got an infection and she just carried on walking on it, and she basically destroyed this whole center of her tibia. And through a mechanism that some of you may know called Wolff's law, if you stress a bone, it gets thicker, and her fibula was taking all her weight, so it's really thickened up, but it was so wobbly and unstable, her leg. We took a piece of the tibia, we took a piece of the fibula, brought it across and stuck it into the tibia, and there she has got an intact tibia now. And interestingly, her fibula started regrowing as well. There's some surgery that is really, really simple and just makes a massive difference. Here's a 1-year-old little girl who rolled into the fire, and she rolled into fire when she was a baby and had a horrible burn all the way around here. And you know, with our body, wounds heal, and her burn wound healed, but it healed in a horrible scar that contracted, cocked her toes up, her ankle up, bent her knee more than 90 degrees. And if nothing was done, she would grow more and more deformed and probably dislocate her knee. So pretty simple operation that I'm sure any of you could do. We just released her scars, and then we put little skin grafts on the area that were no longer covered by skin. Very simple surgery. She'll have terrible scars for probably the rest of her life, but she'll be able to walk and run. And here's an interesting case. That was the first spinal case that I did in Malawi. Here's a boy who was involved in a car crash 6 weeks earlier. And for those of you who know your anatomy, he'd fractured his C2, and you can see that the C2 vertebra had fallen forwards off the C3, and his spinal cord was turning a corner around there. And this X-ray, this is oh, I can't go back. I can go back. There we go. This shadow here is his hands. He was holding his head, and the reason he held his head, because if you let go of his head, he said, my legs get all weak. So he had a completely unstable neck. And this was one of the first big challenges I had over there. We had a country with no spinal service, no spinal surgical equipment. What we'd do in the UK is we put screws into the C2 and the C1 and the C3 with titanium and fix it. So we actually used a piece of stainless steel wire, which we sterilized, and some bone from his pelvis, and actually got his C1 and C2 completely fused and straightened him up, and he's walking around and it's essentially pretty normal now. So I was just giving you there just a little bit of an idea of what the kids' needs were. So the first hospital that I got involved in building, how did that all happen? Well, I was living and working in Malawi, and a mission was about to build a new hospital in Tanzania, a Christian mission. And surprise, surprise, they called me and said, we want to build a hospital with it, and we need an orthopedic theatre. Could you possibly come up? It's our northern neighbour from Malawi, and advise us on how to set up a theatre and design it. And I said, well, I've never designed a theatre in my life, but actually I have used a lot of theatres. So I went over there, and it was really interesting just going over the designs and of this theatre and sort of working out the best ways of putting things. And we did that, and they built it. But I went home thinking, wow, you can build hospitals. And there we were in Malawi. And I've got two registrars here helping me, Jim and Verona. And we were overwhelmed with work, but mainly we were overwhelmed with trauma. And it's the case with every orthopedic unit anywhere in the world. You try to get your elective work done, but you can't because of the weight of trauma. And most of our days were dealt with car crashes and accidents, and all the children who needed elective surgery that I've showed you, very few of them actually got done. And there we were in the government hospital, fixing a broken radius here. But Jim and I went away, and we both had 2-year-old sons, and we put them on the swings and started swinging them one Sunday afternoon, and started to just dream and said, wouldn't it be a great idea if we could build an elective hospital for kids in this country? They've done it in Tanzania. Why can't we do it? And we got a local architect to draw up a design for us. And then we this was 1999, before lots of people had emails and the internet, and we wrote letters all around the world to charities and trusts and said, would anyone be interested in helping us build a hospital in Malawi? And to cut a long story short, the money rolled in, and we started building this hospital in 2000, and there's the roof going on, and we opened it in 2002. There it was, Malawi's first children's orthopedic hospital and research centre. And there we are. And the hospital, you've only seen one side of it there. It's a little bit like, I always think it's a bit like an Oxford college. It was built with four bits around the outside, and then a nice quadrangle in the middle where all the kids could play safely. And we built it with 4 reasons, actually. Firstly, was to give the best clinical care we could to the patient. Secondly, was to be involved in training of young doctors and nurses who were interested in children's orthopedics, and research, to really start to take an interest in what was causing all these conditions and what were the best ways of treating them. And that little hospital, we had 50 major publications that came out in research that we'd done there. And my last point, we built that hospital was to show God's love to the children. Now, why do I dare put something as risky as that in there? Well, because the Minister of Health, the wonderful Minister of Health in Malawi, who I went to see, and we talked over the idea of building this hospital. He said, you have to build it. You have to build it to show the kids of our country that God still loves them. So that's the 4th pillar of our little hospital. And there it is in Malawi. And what happened just a year after we built that hospital, the Minister of Health in Zambia, much bigger neighboring country, who I met at a conference, said, please, can you come and help us build a children's orthopedic hospital in our country? I'll give you 48 acres. So he gave us a large bit of land, and we went to the same donors and built that hospital in Zambia. I was then involved in a research project in Rwanda, and we had found an Australian donor and set up a kids' hospital in Kigali. And then then I was also involved in giving some advice over building a hospital in Niger, which vied with Malawi for being the poorest country in the world at the time. And most recently, you'll see down in Zimbabwe, this is in Bulawayo in Zimbabwe, we've just 2 years ago opened with the Ministry of Health a children's orthopaedic hospital in Bulawayo. And I'd just like to say that the 3 hospitals in Malawi, Zimbabwe, and Zambia, and this one in Niger, are all currently being extremely well run by the organization Cure International. So there's the Zimbabwe hospital. It was an old fever hospital where people went, if they had fever, to be isolated, and was about 80 years old. And about 15 years ago, it had a horrendous fire, and completely all the wood inside the hospital burnt. A lot of the glass and the metalwork got melted, and it was just a shell. But the Ministry of Health gave us that hospital and said, if you can fix it, we can together set up a kids' orthopedic unit. And so we set up a drone and took pictures as we built. And I was able to raise some money from several people in the city in London, and we completely re-roofed the old building and built ourselves a big theatre block just here. We've got a ward block for the kids there, and another ward block which is currently used as an outpatients. And you'll see in the operating theatre, we've got one big theatre, another big theatre, and then another big theatre. So we initially opened the hospital with just 2 theatres, and this was a storeroom, but we're doing so much surgery that this is now being converted into a theatre. There I can see a little bit more closely. There we are during the dry season. Lovely country, Zimbabwe, as it goes through its seasons. And there's the roof on our theatre. And there we were in the middle of COVID. We just finished we finished the hospital, and like all pictures taken in COVID, there's our tent in the car park, testing our kids before we opened. So we opened in 2021, and the hospital is just doing so well that we need another ward. Only been open a couple of years, so we've got a bit of land around there, and we are building a new ward. Now I'm so proud if this works. That's the old ward, and here's the land where we have built the new ward, and that was. Oops. I didn't make that. Somebody, a friend of mine at the hospital did it and sent it to me. But yeah, so that hospital is doing extremely well. I wanted to just run through with you what do you go about setting up a hospital? And I'm going to give you 10 tips if any of you ever want to build a hospital. The first thing is establish the need. Don't do anything unless there is a need. It's not too difficult to establish the need in a country that doesn't have a children's orthopedic hospital, but you do see in the world, particularly in some parts of the lower middle income countries, things that are there which aren't really needed. So establish the need before you set about any task. Then meet the Minister of Health. It's been really wonderful in Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Malawi how really readily available the ministers of health are. If you telephoned Whitehall and said, "Could I meet the Minister of Health?" it wouldn't happen. But the ministers of health would be really helpful people. They usually invite you around, you have a cup of tea, and you talk about the issues. And it's really important that you do things with the ministry, because the ministry is the department that's looking after the health of people in the country. Then find the money, of course, find the money for the building. It's a lot cheaper to build in many lower middle income countries than it is in the UK, but the money needs to be found. Form a team. It's really important that you do things as a team, and really important that you've got local leadership. It's not appropriate for somebody who's come from the UK to be the team leader. You may be someone who drives and helps the team, but you've got to have a local leader, and find a local leader and champion it. And in the 3 countries that I've worked in, that wasn't difficult, and we were able to work with driven local orthopedic surgeons. And then you've got to have a way of making the hospital sustainable and functioning economically. It's particularly in countries which aren't well off. And what we did certainly in the initial phases of the hospitals was we had a plan of having a private ward around the side of the hospital where we would treat adults who wanted to have private treatment, who would otherwise have flown out to South Africa or to Europe and have their treatment. And so we treated some quite well-heeled adults with hip replacements, knee replacements, and things they were prepared to pay money for. And with that money, we were able to treat the kids pretty much for nothing. And most of the conditions that I showed you on kids are actually very, very associated with poverty. If you're poor, you don't eat enough, you don't have enough calciums, you end up with weak bones, you can't fight infections, etc. Once you've got your plan sorted out, you've got to find a piece of land. And we were very fortunate. The ministry, as in all those cases, allocated us a piece of land. Design your hospital. The tip I'll give you is get a local architect, get somebody who knows the country, who's built buildings there, preferably hospitals, but definitely buildings. We had an architect from California who came out when we were doing the first hospital. He said, "Do you know, I'll give my time free, and I'll come over several times a year to supervise this hospital." And he drew a design up for us, and it looked wonderful, and we showed it to our local architect, and he laughed. He said, "This won't work." He said the toilets, they're all internal, they're tucked away internally. That's what we do in the US. That's what happens in Britain in every new hospitals, because we've got running water and there's 24-hour electricity, and we can have fan extractions, and we know that whatever you push in the toilet will flush away. He said in Malawi we choose the side of the hospital where the prevailing wind is not on, and we put all the toilets there, and they have to have windows. And you think, so sensible, so you have natural ventilation of the hospitals. So get it designed by someone who knows the place. Building and equipment. We're fortunate to have a lot of equipment that we got. I don't want to say secondhand, but it was used, and we got it from hospitals that were upgrading. And I've found that you can buy stuff for about 5% of the new price when things are upgraded. And a lot of hospitals all around the richer parts of the world will upgrade their operating tables when the old one is absolutely fine. So we were able to get a lot of equipment at a very reasonable price. And the next thing you need is staff. And one of the big issues in a country that doesn't have enough medical personnel is if you build a new institution and you need to employ staff, nurses and all the other staff, you could find yourself stealing them from other places, not really net helping. So we had a plan that for everyone that the staff that we employed, we would do training and train as many as we were employing. And then once you've got your staff, I should have said on the issue of staff, we try to have as many local staff as we can. There's some positions, such as children's orthopaedic surgical specialists, in the early days, we needed to bring in as expatriates, but with an aim, as soon as we possibly could, of training local surgeons to do the work there, and then get started. And don't be in a hurry. Don't be in a hurry to do lots of fancy, complicated surgery. Get started really slowly. Do simple operations that don't go wrong, just to test your systems. So that you get things working smoothly, your staff are working smoothly, and the systems are working smoothly. And also so that you don't have complications, because everybody watches a new hospital. And if somebody were to get an infection or sadly a death in the first month of a hospital being opened, the public could turn against it. And everyone's watching. So do really simple operations, go for the low-hanging fruit. Operations that won't be complicated. Don't do spinal surgery in the first year of your hospital. And I say, sadly, death can occur in the country. When we first started in Malawi, the under 5s death rate was 20%. So if you had 5 kids, families with 5 kids, you'd lose one of them. So it was inevitable that there was going to be were going to be patients who died, but it didn't happen for the first 3 years in our hospital, which was wonderful. So there's your 10 tips how to start a hospital. A few reflections on the time that I've been involved in institution building, really helping to set up a college of surgeons and helping to set up those hospitals. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The world is not a fair place. It'd be wonderful if it really was a fair place, but it's not, and that's the world we live in. Secondly, just because it's difficult doesn't mean it can't be done. I never went to Africa thinking I'll build some hospitals. Didn't even think about it. And I think if you had suggested that to me, I'd have said, no way. I'm going to quietly going to work hard in one that's already done. But actually, it was difficult, but it doesn't mean it couldn't be done, and it can be done. And consider difficult tasks. Cooperation is really crucial in so many areas of our lives. You can try to do things on your own, but doing things as a team is so much better. There's a wonderful South African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go on your own, but if you want to go far, go together. And we want to go far with these things, so we want to go together as a team. Fourthly, there will be difficulties, and in the questions you can ask me what some of the difficulties we've had were. Expect difficulties, because they will come. And like difficulties in every area of our life, really, difficulties will come. The issue isn't will the difficulties come. The issue is how we face them, how we look at these difficulties and manage them. This hardly needs saying, but the rewards, the personal rewards of helping where there's need are absolutely immense. There's educational and scientific rewards, which I haven't even talked about here, but the studies and projects and research that we've been able to do in those institutions, really improving treatment. And Kujani said a little bit earlier at the very beginning that we've set up an organization called Global Clubfoot Initiative with and what we're able to do is teach all around the world some of the things that we've been able to discover. Lastly, you've only got one life, and I know you're all thinking hard because you're all members of high impact medicine, and that's really great. But you've only got one life. You've got one opportunity to make a difference in the career that you have. So think hard about what you do. So lastly, before I finish, some advice. And what's my advice to all of you? Make friends across borders. It's easy to have friends with the people who are just in the same corridor in the same town, but try and make friends as in medicine, as students and as doctors across borders from other places. Visit. I know this is a world where you're not allowed, where we're very conscious of our carbon footprint, and I'm not saying get in jets and go places, but when opportunities do come, see what it's like where others are working, and when you do visit, observe and reflect before opening your mouth. And I've had so many people who came out from high-income countries to work or to spend short periods seeing our work, and so many people see something and immediately mouth off about, hey, you could do this a lot better if you do this. You think, no, you haven't lived here. So observe and reflect without it before opening your mouth, and that actually goes for so much in life. If there's an area in medicine, in high impact medicine that you're interested, find co-travelers and mentors. Find other people who are interested. There's organizations that are encouraging medical students and young doctors in global surgery, which is the area that I'm particularly interested in. But find co-travelers and mentors, people who are a bit further along the path than you, who you can bash your ideas off. And lastly, don't lose your dreams. I think as students, we can have amazing dreams, and then the life of being an F1 and an F2 gets you down, and then you try and buy a little house and get a mortgage, and that gets you down, and then I can't believe because I've got a mortgage. And don't lose your dreams. Remind yourself of your dreams. Just let you a little picture of our global surgical group in Oxford, and we meet weekly, and we have an annual 1 week's course, which you're welcome to come on. Thank you very much. And there's my email.